The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech podcast feed.
Woo! What you've got is the best in the world, baby. And why? Why is the man of tomorrow, the Golden Stallion, the rated R radio star, Savzu, Dr. Brian Sovryn, why is he the best in the world? Well, there might be a bunch of reasons, but... and you claim him, baby, not me. But it's because I take security dead serious. As I always say, only the paranoid survive, baby. And that's what we're going to get into here. What might sound like an innocuous discussion about headphones is something far grander. And what I'm going to tell you or share with you is how to keep these, keep this level of security that I just described. Taking it really seriously, doing everything that's practical and feasible. Well, really, how to make it practical, how to make it inexpensive, because the matter that we're talking about is ubiquitous. It is none other than Bluetooth itself. Bluetooth has become, next to USB, and of course, I guess now maybe you'd say USB-C, even though I think that still has a good distance to go before it matches the form factor or the prevalence of the form factor of USB-A. It's everywhere. Like, Bluetooth is just that much of a standard. However, unlike, USB dominated very quickly, partly because, it made so much sense in both the consumer space and in the enterprise space. Bluetooth definitely took over more in the consumer space than so much in the enterprise space, but it really has become a factor, especially in high-risk environments. It's become a protocol that gets used. It's become a standard that gets used in those environments. But it really took a long time for it to get there, especially in comparison to USB. Now, USB had, shall we say, an easier time of it, partly because everybody was looking for a standard, like a connectivity standard hardline like that, to take advantage of. And I remember when I was a teenager and how bold and frankly crazy it was considered for Steve Jobs to say with the all new, which it was new at the time, it didn't exist before, the Apple iMac, for it to be completely or more or less completely USB. People thought that was insane. Like, what are you talking about? You need to have, COM ports, you need to have this connector and so on. But no, everything was USB. Amazing. But part of the reason that I think USB got adopted so quickly and it took longer for Bluetooth is security around USB wasn't so much of a concern, as to where with wireless protocols like Bluetooth, security is a very real concern. And as ubiquitous as, as omnipresent, it seems, as Bluetooth has become, to the point that devices like smartphones and others are removing entire ports that had been mainstays on portable devices or on devices of any stripe. I'll just say it. I think we've jumped the gun on that. And of course, Apple tried to lead the way again, ironically, kind of like how with USB, where they really, they had courage. Well, in 1996, they really did. In 2016 or whenever it was that they finally said, okay, we're getting rid of the headphone jack, that wasn't courage, because guess what? They didn't get rid of the headphone jack. Every Mac still has a headphone jack, so they're full of shit. But we don't need to call Apple out on the carpet about this again. We've done it plenty of times, and it's always deserved. But we're not here for that. Bottom line being that Bluetooth has really become order of the day for how a lot of people will connect devices. Of course, Apple's big on that as well. With their AirPods and so on. But the issue here is, ultimately, Bluetooth is not as secure a protocol as it really should be to be as prevalent, as omnipresent as it is. And it always seems like, it seems like maybe every month or at least a few times a year, we will get reports of Bluetooth exploits. And I feel like they always kind of get swept under the rug because the mainstream media, who will gladly come out and say, oh, well, this protocol does this, or WhatsApp did this, or blah, 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 blah. They'll bring all that out. But nobody wants to threaten like the infrastructure level problems of the lack of security in the Bluetooth protocol. Fortunately, the Bluetooth protocol is regularly updated. Now, that's great. Like, I'm not complaining about that. I mean, maybe the most recent, really nasty bit of business, if you remember, it was called Blurtooth, B-L-U-R, tooth, Blurtooth. This was in September of last year, or no, a couple years ago, 2020. Yeah, so I know there were ones even after that, but that was like the big one that I remember most recently. And this was a man-in-the-middle attack where the encryption keys could get overwritten, with the connection between whatever device and whatever Bluetooth device you were using. And it only affected versions, I think it was 4.2 and versions 5.0 of Bluetooth. And then 5.1 was building in a solution into the protocol of Bluetooth that would keep Blurtooth, from working. Basically, it was going to stop, the encryption keys from getting overwritten on the device. So, but that was a very nasty bit of business. And you got to understand, like now they recommended, there's actually, it's called Bluetooth SIG. Okay. Which is, they write the core specifications. It's a group, that's what it means. Special interest group. It's a group that works on kind of like there's like the Wi-Fi Alliance or whatever, that they all work on the latest Wi-Fi protocols and so on. Bluetooth has the same exact thing. Unfortunately, this isn't a very open group. Wish it was, but it's not. But anyway, they were recommending to device manufacturers, hey, look, if you're able to implement the fix for Bluetooth into, whatever device you have that's doing 4.2 or 5.0 Bluetooth, please do so. But there have been plenty of other Bluetooth exploits where there's no way you can put it into older specifications. You have to get the latest specification, and they have to bake it in as it gets released. Now, the issue here, again, that's fine. This is how cybersecurity works. There's nothing crazy about it. Okay. Again, maybe a lot of this shit should have been thought out. A lot of this shit should have been resolved before, again, Bluetooth became as big a deal as it is right now, in 2022. But regardless, it's here. So the problem is you might buy and this is far from an exaggeration, you might buy a $300 to hell, it could be, a few $1,000, or over $1,000 anyway, device, whether it's headphones, I mean, there's all kinds of things you can get your hands on, that will use Bluetooth to communicate with a nearby device, whether it's your smartphone or something else. That this device could be not outdated in that it doesn't work anymore, but outdated in its security model, right? Because it's using an older Bluetooth standard. Frankly, from the day that it's released, but, the next day, you could find out about a 0-day that's been, in use. You could find out, like a team, say, at Purdue University could come up with could discover an exploit or something. And then you're like, well, holy shit, how dare I, even turn my Bluetooth on a smartphone? And that's another thing too, like smartphones will often have like an older spec, or depending upon which ones you're buying. If you're not buying, like, say, one of the latest, as it were, could have an older spec on it. There's an argument to be made just from, like the security exploits that get discovered, the flaws that get discovered in older radios, in smartphone radios, that buying an expensive smartphone is actually a bad idea. Now, that's not entirely true. And the reason why I say you don't really want to do that, even though I get the concept, okay, where instead you buy $200 phones every couple of years and then you get the latest radios when you get the next one for $200. The difference being that a smartphone can generally, because It has a whole OS. It's a lot more complex. There's a lot of software action going on. And if you're getting like a higher end smartphone from Samsung or from Google, or even Apple, I guess in this case, the smartphone itself can resolve a lot of these Bluetooth security issues within the software, right? Especially when you're getting a smartphone that has guaranteed updates for years and years and years. So you can feel a little more confident about buying a device that has that, especially with smartphones. Even laptops, this can really be a concern because a lot of laptops, it's more up to the manufacturer to release a fix. And you're not going to get guaranteed to get a Bluetooth fix from, say, Microsoft if you're running Windows on your laptop. Okay, so laptops, this could even become, a very, very real concern. Now, I talked about this recently. There was an episode that I know raised some eyebrows because the title of it was Kamala Harris is Right. And we were talking about Bluetooth because she doesn't want to use Bluetooth. She considers it a security issue. She's not wrong. That's why the episode was titled what it was. And in that, I was saying that, I use an older laptop with Windows 7 even. I mean, the chances of me getting a firmware update, to close off an exploit, or a security flaw in its Bluetooth, isn't going to happen, right? Or it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. So my solution is I just turn Bluetooth off on that, and I use USB devices to connect to it. That was what that whole episode was about, and this is kind of a follow-up to that, okay? And certainly around these Bluetooth, security concerns, I mean, it's totally valid to turn off Bluetooth and leave it off. If you want to do that, like that is a completely valid model, threat model. But I would challenge you, especially when we run into, a world now where headphone jacks are getting removed on smartphones. And again, like I said, the more important thing here is to get the latest security updates. So if you have to get the latest phone that might have removed those ports, but you're going to also get, timely multi-year security updates, I'll take the timely multi-year security updates over the headphone jack. Now, of course, you can, most of these phones would still have a USB-C port or something along those lines that you could connect. You could just get an adapter and connect, say, headphones, which is probably the most popular Bluetooth device next to mice used in the world. Okay, you could certainly get adapters to connect those things if it so happens that the ports you need to connect your favorite peripheral no longer exists on the device. That's a possibility, and obviously a great security model also. But for me, at the same time, a couple things. And one of these I'm not going to get into in this episode, but I will review in the future. Having a bunch of like wires hanging out of my dash, when I want to plug in, say, I have an older car, or well, now it's older. Yes, it's a 2007 Jeep. That doesn't have Bluetooth. Granted, I could, upgrade the, the deck on it, right? The stereo on it to where maybe it would have Bluetooth. But even actually what I'm going to talk about in this episode could resolve that issue as well. But I don't like having that. I like having Bluetooth connectivity in my car. I like having connectivity that I have a lot of control over, though. I don't want to be putting an Android Auto into the damn thing. But also, I don't want to have to carry around my smartphone all the time, but I may want to continue listening to the audio. So Bluetooth headphones make a lot of sense. Okay, now I want to bring up quickly, because what I'm going to describe to you can actually take it, or can resolve this issue as well. Some researchers, we'll call them that, discuss concerns around not Bluetooth as a security flaw, but Bluetooth as a health flaw, as a health concern. As in, if you're wearing Bluetooth headphones and it's like right there at your temple, and you're getting this, you have this, Bluetooth, even if it's LE, right? Even if it's low energy, this field like going right to your, right through your blood-brain barrier. Okay, that they have health concerns that they want to raise around that, and I understand that. I'm not saying that the research on that is 100% conclusive, but I understand where people are coming from on that. So I just want to bring that up as well, and you're going to see where what I am describing, the solution I'm going to describe to you, would resolve that also, if you are one of those that are concerned about Bluetooth more from a health perspective. Now, I mean, there's some people who go so far with health that they're like, well, any Bluetooth field like any Bluetooth quote unquote radiation, around me is negatively impacting my health. It doesn't matter where it is, whether it's going through the blood-brain barrier or not. And for those, well, obviously you're not going to use Bluetooth. And also I would argue, and look, I'm not insulting you here. I'm dead serious. Don't use a fucking smartphone. Like, just don't, because the amount of radios that the average smartphone takes advantage of, I mean, if you're concerned about the, whatever EM fields of any type or something, don't touch it. Okay. I'm being deadly serious about that. Like, I respect your concerns, on that level. But if you're not that far, and again, we want to solve security, and maybe even if you're a little concerned on the health side of things, here's how you can resolve this issue of not buying, or spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars every few months or every year on new devices just to make sure that your shit is locked down, just to make sure that, your devices and everything, everything is as secure as it can possibly be. So the solution is, these are really, really handy little devices. They're essentially just like Bluetooth, receivers. Okay. And these come in varying sizes, varying types, varying feature sets. For me, the simpler, the better. They're about the size. Yeah. Well, it depends on what kind of stick of gum we're talking about here, but they're tiny. I mean, barely like an inch, an inch wide, and maybe an inch and a half, high, whatever. I mean, like they're incredibly small. And they'll have a little 1/8 jack on them, right? So that you can plug in, your wired headphones. They'll add a microphone, which that can be advantageous because, maybe your wired headphones that you have don't have a microphone on them. I mean, understand, there are wired headphones that have been sold since like the 1970s that are still the best in the world at what they do. Okay. And Sony or whoever they're never going to update on that model. Why? Because the industry doesn't want them to. The industry wants, like their M1550s to stay exactly the same as they were in 1981 for good reason. So, little devices like this, and I mean, really, it's like, just imagine a small skipping stone that you toss into a lake. That's how big these things are. Can give modern features to classic, well-designed, best-in-class headphones that you've been using forever. So there's an advantage, there. So yeah, it'll have like a little microphone on it, and usually they'll have one or two buttons, like the one I'm actually holding here, and I'll link to it in the show notes if you want to check it out. It'll have, it has a little volume rocker, right? Plus and minus. It has a singular button that handles Bluetooth connectivity, play and pause, all of that. This one specifically is Bluetooth 5.0, which again, you could still have security concerns around that, like we talked about with Bluetooth. Some of these will have a screen. We'll talk about that more in a second, but some of these will also have like a little LCD screen on them. I don't really care for that. Reason being, this one gets, the one I have here, it's the Comsoon, I think is the name of the company. It's one of those funny Amazon names because it's easy to get through regulatory hurdles when you have a name that nobody else is going to use. That's why they have all these funny letters. Anyway, this one has 16 hours of battery life. Now that in itself is amazing, and it can do that because it's a separate device from the headphones themselves. Okay. And it's not jamming in a ton of features. The ones with like a little LCD screen on them, I don't dig that because usually that LCD screen will cut the battery life in half or even by a quarter. I want maximum amount of battery life. But, and these things are incredibly lightweight. They don't take long to charge at all. In fact, the model of this is the J22. I think originally the company that did these, I've been using these for a few years. The original company I think was called Jaybird, which maybe that's even where the J comes from. And then like everybody started releasing these things. And they used to be they've gotten to a point now where like they've just got the design and everything about them really down to a science. Like they don't have to improve much on it other than all they do, because like they look the same for years. All they do is, and this is the advantage, is that every year or two, they come out with a new model that will have the latest Bluetooth spec on it. And that's all it has to do. And that's great. And you know what? It's an awesome business model because just for all the reasons I've spent the past 15 minutes in this episode describing, that's all you want. It's just like the latest spec so that you have the latest security features. Okay. Or the latest security implementations into Bluetooth. So, these cost on average 15, depending upon the type of model you get, anywhere from 15 to $30. I think this one might have cost me like 17. And it works beautifully. And, again, every couple years, or every 3 years, whatever, you spend $17 on a new Bluetooth receiver. Baby, that's a hell of a lot cheaper than a proper pair of Bluetooth headphones. A hell of a lot cheaper. Even over time, even over years, it's still cheaper. Now, of course, what I connect to this, to the 3.5 millimeter jack here, I still use my Apple EarPods, not AirPods. Fuck that shit. I use my Apple EarPods. Still the best because I don't, I think they're the best headphones, like portable headphones out there. They're lightweight. Somehow they sit in the ears so perfectly. Even if you're working out, they just sit there. I don't know how they do that. But also, they're such a standardized model. You can get clips. Like I have clips that I can add onto it in case I was doing something that was like really intense and they could fall out of my ear. But you can get like the ear loops that clip right onto it and they work great. So yeah, I use those. And I'm going to use Apple EarPods probably for the rest of my life because for whatever reason, nobody can mimic or is willing to put nobody's willing to sell this type of headphone that doesn't jam into the ear, right? It's just hanging on the outside of it, side firing with speakers. For whatever reason, there's no market incentive to sell that kind of headphone with high quality sound. Apple can do it because they're a toss in with any iPhone that they sell or iPod. Okay. That's why they can, it's essentially a loss leader. Like they just toss it in. They give them, great sound, and it really is great sound. And they don't think about it because the money is all made up for with the sale of the iPhone itself that they came with. So I'm going to use these for all time because no one's going to like re-release these, and nobody's going to copy them. And like I would pay I'd pay $100 for, earphones like this that have the same level of sound as Apple's do. I really would. But nobody's going to do it because there's just not that big of a market out there. I guess most people are okay with jamming shit into their ears, even though Samsung, what was that guy? His ear got infected or something. Oh, it was terrible. This was just a couple months ago. And it's from these headphones that you're just jamming into your ear. And I loved it because the tech press was suddenly like, what the fuck are we doing jamming this shit into our ears? And as I've been saying for over a decade, yeah, what the fuck are you doing jamming shit into your ears when, that's such a sensitive area. Ooh, anyway. So that's what I use to plug into this, but you can use all kinds of things. And again, if your laptop has the latest Bluetooth spec, you could use it to connect to your laptop. Some of these offer what a lot of even high-end Bluetooth headphones don't offer, which is the ability to simultaneously connect to multiple devices, which is a very nice feature. Okay. So I think these things are genius. And you can also plug them, like I mentioned earlier, you could plug them into like, say, the aux jack in your car. And then suddenly you have Bluetooth. And if you powered it, in fact, this is the other nice thing. I'm glad that these constantly get updated because now when you buy these, they have a USB-C connector. And as I've talked about really throughout 2021, I've been working hard to only have devices that charge with USB-C. Basically, my PlayStation Vita is the last device that doesn't. But yeah, you get the latest, connectivity spec, not just in Bluetooth, but also in how you charge the damn thing, which that's an advantage as well. And again, this keeps you up to date on the latest security specifications, but at what, $15 a year or every 2 years? Fucking right. You're not going to get firmware updates on it, but then that's not even, because that's the concern with a lot of IoT devices, right? Is that, oh, well, I got this, IoT device out of Red China and shit, they're never going to update the firmware on this thing when a security exploit comes out. Yeah, that happens all the time. But with this, it's such a low cost device that frankly, it doesn't matter if they never update the firmware on it, even though some of them do. Some of them make a big business out of this. But frankly, there's no need, because again, you're going to completely replace the hardware every year or two. So problem solved. Also, these, you can kind of put them anywhere, either in a pocket or you can get because smartphones, it used to be the hot thing to wear a smartphone on an armband. Good luck putting a 7-inch smartphone, right, on an armband. It's bigger than some people's arms. So this is nice because you could put it in an armband and you have the simple button that allows you to play and pause and all of this. And you can walk away from the smartphone also. There's an advantage in that. But yeah, these are incredibly tough, very pocketable devices. I love it. Do I wish it was just a full-on MP3 player that could, do like speed up, where you could do variable speed on what you're listening to? Oh, that'd be fucking great, and get rid of the smartphone entirely. Sure, I'm there. But at the same time, if you are wanting to have that Bluetooth connectivity, what I was going to say earlier is that because it is pocketable and you can put it anywhere, if you do have that blood-brain barrier health concern, this is handling the Bluetooth wherever you put it, whether it's in your pocket, whether it's, on your arm or wherever you happen to set it. So, that could mitigate that health concern if you have it. But I think this is ultimately the way to go, to handle security, because otherwise, you're rolling the dice when you spend $300 on a great pair of headphones, and not only that, I've had many cases where actually it was a Kindle Oasis, where the Kindle Oasis used at the time the latest Bluetooth spec of 4.2, and my Bluetooth headphones were like Bluetooth 3 point whatever. And because of, my headphones using the older spec, even though I had just bought the headphones, even after I had already owned the Kindle Oasis, the sound would constantly skip. And I think it was because the newer Bluetooth spec didn't like the older one. That's actually, that very thing is what got me into buying these little Bluetooth receivers, because okay, this seems like the most cost-effective way to be on the latest spec as your other devices, end up upgrading. So I really think it's a great way to go. And again, both from, a practicality, a price point, and, from a security standpoint, there's a ton of advantages to this. And for me, the other nice thing too is, again, I use my Apple EarPods. They have a 1/8 connector. I use them everywhere on every device. And so if it needs to be Bluetooth, like when I'm connecting to my Pixel 6, which doesn't have a headphone jack, I can just power on this thing that gets 16 hours of battery life, which is insane. The Bluetooth headphones that usually get that kind of life are usually massive, right? They're the big over the ears with the cups and everything because it's got to store that battery. Not the case with this. But yeah, it allows me to do that. And then I can essentially hot swap into a physical female port for the 1/8 jack. Or, I can plug into a 1/8 jack, and, and which of course I love because you don't have to wait for anything to connect, right? And you just pop it in and boom, and away you go. Whatever device I'm switching out to, because there could be multiple computers around, and I can just instantly pull them out, and then I want to connect to my smartphone or to my car, and I just plug it in and boot, into the receiver, and away you go. Awesome. So a lot of advantages here. And if you've never thought about using these or you didn't know that they exist, I recommend them. Again, from, a security model, price point, and if you're so inclined, for your health. Again, but jury is still kind of out on a lot of that as far as how Bluetooth negatively affects your health overall. So again, I will leave a link to the one that I presently use in the show notes. Again, mine is Bluetooth 5.0. like we were talking about with Bluetooth, that could affect Bluetooth 5.0. So you might want to look around to find one that is at either 5.1, or you might even want to wait a little bit if you're okay with that for, when Bluetooth 5.2 drops or whatever the latest spec happens to be. But, for $15, well, no harm, no foul really at that price point, in my opinion. So I will leave that in the show notes, and I will leave this episode here. More Sovryn tech to come that I can't wait to share with you. I will see all of you, on the other side.